It started as a joke, or at least, that's how the internet first saw it. In a brightly lit studio in Stockholm, a well-known Swedish musician sat casually in front of a camera, surrounded by vintage guitars, modular synths, and pristine microphones. He was respected, trained in conservatories, praised for his technical mastery, and followed by millions online for his honest takes on world music. That day, the topic was traditional instruments from Southeast Asia. When the Filipino instruments came up, he smirked. He tapped the screen, paused on an image of a Kulintang, then laughed softly. He called it primitive. He joked that it sounded like pots and pans having an argument. He questioned whether these instruments could ever be used in real composition. His audience laughed along in the comments. Clips were shared. Memes followed. At first, it looked like just another internet moment. Arrogant, dismissive, forgettable. But then it reached the Philippines, and everything changed. Within hours, Filipino musicians began reacting, not with rage, but with quiet confidence. Elders from Mindanao shared stories about the Kulintang being older than many European musical systems. Ethnomusicologists posted threads explaining how these instruments weren't built for Western harmony, but for something deeper: community, rhythm, memory, and ceremony. A young composer from Davao uploaded a video. No talking, just sound. He sat on the floor, surrounded by Kulintang gongs, Agong, Dabakan, and babendil. The camera rolled. His hands moved. The rhythm unfolded, complex, layered, alive. It didn't ask for validation. It didn't explain itself. The video ended with silence. Then it exploded. Shares climbed into the millions. Musicians from Japan, Brazil, Turkey, and Nigeria stitched it with reactions. Jazz drummers paused the video frame by frame, trying to understand the polyrhythms. Classical percussionists admitted they couldn't replicate it. Electronic producers sampled the tones, stunned by how modern the ancient sounded. The narrative flipped overnight. People started asking questions the original mockery never considered. Why does Western music always get to define what's advanced? Why are instruments judged by how well they fit into European scales instead of how well they serve their own culture? As the internet debated, something unexpected happened. The Swedish musician noticed. At first, he ignored it. Then he made a follow-up post, half apology, half defense. He said he was taken out of context, that he was just joking, that people were too sensitive. But the damage was done. The comment section no longer belonged to him. Filipino musicians didn't insult him. They invited him. Come listen. Come learn. Come feel it live. One invitation stood out. A small cultural collective in Mindanao publicly invited him to a Kulintang gathering. No stage, no tickets, just musicians, elders, and instruments passed down through generations. The internet watched closely. Weeks passed. Then, unexpectedly, he accepted. Cameras followed him as he arrived in the Philippines. Humid air, unfamiliar sounds, distant rhythms drifting through the trees. He looked confident at first, curious, maybe even skeptical. But that confidence softened when he met the elders. They didn't lecture him. They didn't mention his comments. They handed him a mallet. They asked him to listen first. The Kulintang ensemble began to play, not for performance, not for content, for tradition, for each other. The Swedish musician stood still. The rhythms didn't repeat the way he expected. There was no clear lead. The music breathed. It responded. It shifted depending on who played and who listened. Later, he admitted something on camera that surprised everyone. "I don't know where the bar line is," he said quietly. "And that scares me." An elder smiled. "There is no bar line," he replied. "There is only awareness." They explained how the Kulintang wasn't about domination of sound, but conversation. How players learned by watching, not reading. How mistakes weren't failures, but openings for others to respond. How this music survived colonization, war, and erasure, because it lived in people, not paper. That night, the Swedish musician tried to play. He struggled. His hands, trained for precision, hesitated. He searched for patterns that weren't meant to be trapped. He laughed nervously when the rhythm slipped away from him. And then something changed. He stopped trying to control it. He listened. The moment was subtle but powerful. His playing softened. He followed instead of led. The elders nodded. The rhythm welcomed him, not as an expert, but as a participant. A clip from that night went viral, not because he played well, but because he looked humbled. Back home, the internet reacted again, this time differently. Musicians praised the Filipinos for their grace. Commentators pointed out how often non-Western art is dismissed until validated by Western struggle. Filipinos spoke up, not angrily, but firmly. This music never needed approval. You just finally heard it. The Swedish musician uploaded a final video weeks later. No flashy editing, no jokes. Just him in his studio, Kulintang sounds softly playing behind him. "I was wrong," he said. "Not because I offended people, but because I didn't listen. I judged music by my own rules and called everything else inferior. That's not expertise, that's ignorance." He announced he was collaborating with Filipino musicians, not to modernize their instruments, but to learn how to adapt himself. That video broke the internet, not because of drama, but because humility is rare. Streams of Filipino instrumental music surged worldwide. Schools added Kulintang to world music curricula. Young Filipinos posted videos reclaiming instruments they were once told were outdated. Elders cried seeing global audiences finally listening. And quietly, without slogans or outrage, something shifted. The story was never really about a Swedish musician. It was about how easily brilliance is dismissed when it doesn't come in familiar packaging. About how colonization taught the world to rank cultures instead of understand them. About how Filipino instruments, once mocked as noise, were actually carrying centuries of intelligence, emotion, and community. The internet moved on, as it always does. But the sound stayed. In studios across the world, gongs echoed. Rhythms without bar lines found new ears. And somewhere in the Philippines, an elder smiled, knowing the music had done what it always does best. It waited. And when the world was finally ready to listen, it spoke.